Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we're gonna review a Chinese ICE car. And that's a bit of a surprise for some people, but you know, they do exist. And in some cases, they aren't all that bad. Now the car next to me is coming from a quite big manufacturer from China. And the brand's name is Geely. Now, not a lot of people know about Geely, but a lot of people know about the brands Geely owns or partially owns. Some of those are, I don't know, let's say Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, Smart, and Daimler to some extent, namely Mercedes-Benz at the end of the day. So yeah, Geely has been quite smart with its money and has been investing and acquiring a number of well-known brands, and it was able to seep the knowledge those companies had and create quite formidable products. Now, on the electric side of things, Chinese brands already have the edge compared to Europeans or Americans and so on and so forth. But a lot of people still think that the ICE versions are not actually quite up to par. And that's what we're going to set out to find out today, because the Geely Coolray is one of those ICE cars that nobody really talks about just because it's coming from China. So what is it? It's a subcompact crossover that's roughly the same size as a Dacia Duster, and it plans to rival it and other models in this range, like the Peugeot 2008, for example, or maybe the Volkswagen T-Roc or Taigo, cars along those lines, or maybe the Skoda Kamiq, and so on and so forth. There's a number of cars rivaling this car, including the MG ZS Hybrid, for example. Now, this car is quite peculiar. Now, when you first see it, you might think it's a bit outrageous. And I actually dubbed it the gaming car. You know how we have gaming laptops, gaming TVs, gaming monitors, gaming desks, gaming chairs, gaming mouse pads, and so on and so forth today. I think because of the character and the design of this car, you could easily call it the gaming car, because it's just so outlandish, so aggressive in every single direction you look at it, right? So just look at it from the front and it's going to seem like a very aggressive option overall. So it has a lot of sharp edges, it has huge openings in the front bumper, you know, the headlamps are quite aggressive as well. We even have fake hood scoops over here. So yeah, it feels like it's ready to tear up the asphalt. And to be frank, it's not that far off, but we're going to talk about that when we drive it. Now, if you look at the back, things get even more ridiculous. So on the GF and the GF Plus models, you have this wing at the back that says it has a scarlet S on it. I don't really know where that S is coming from, maybe from Sport, because none of the equipment lines have the letter S in them. And then you have a rear bumper with 4 tailpipes. Now, the best part about that is they are actually real, and you can actually hear them when you're driving the car, even though the engine under the hood isn't all that big. So yeah, it feels outlandish when you first look at it, but if you start to drive it and get a feel for it, it's actually not that bad. So the Geely Coolray is available in three equipment lines. So we have the GK, the GF, and the GF Plus. The difference between the GF and the GF Plus is the fact that the GF Plus has a specific color available for it, and it has diamond cut wheels. That's about it, and you pay 1,500 euros extra. Whereas the GF, I think, is the more balanced choice. This car is a GF model. You have a bicolor exterior, right? So we have a black on this car. We have 18-inch wheels. Those come as standard, and we have that wing at the back, which unfortunately comes as standard on this equipment line, right? So I think it looks pretty good. In terms of size, we're talking about 4 meters 38 in length, so that's 4 centimeters extra compared to the Duster, whereas the wheelbase is 2.6 meters, which is 58 millimeters shorter than the Duster. But we're going to see just what that means for the interior space when we hop inside. So yeah, that's about it from the outside. Let's talk about what's hiding under the hood. So let's talk about the engine choices on the Geely Coolray. Luckily, there's only one, and it was developed with Volvo technology. Even though this is not a Volvo engine. So this is a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine. It is becoming the standard size for an ICE engine in China, and I think, as far as I know, it has a lot to do with the way cars are taxed over there. So even though you're going to see a lot of Chinese-made ICE engines with this engine size, that doesn't mean they're all the same, that they behave the same. It's just that they have the same size just because of taxation limits. And this engine has been built with Volvo knowledge and expertise, but it's not a Volvo engine. Volvo does have a 1.5 liter, but it's a 3-cylinder. And theirs is using a timing belt. This one uses a timing chain. It also has a fixed geometry turbine attached to it, so it doesn't have a variable geometry turbine, and it has direct injection. Those are the main issues you probably are interested in. It develops 172 horsepower and 290 newton meters of torque, and it sends all that power to the front wheels through a 7-speed dual clutch, wet clutch setup gearbox to the front wheels, right? So this gearbox has been developed by Geely in collaboration with Volvo. You'll find it on some Volvo models as well, and it's supposed to last about 250,000 kilometers, more than the DSG from Volkswagen, which was used as a benchmark for this gearbox. Other than that, there's really not much to say. We don't have any hybrid options, and not even a mild hybrid setup, so that might be an issue for some people looking to cut on their taxes. In some countries you do get some benefits in kind from the government if you have a hybrid. However, it might be a relief for some people who just don't want to buy a hybrid, and they don't want the complications that brings to the table. On the suspension side of things, we do have a McPherson setup up front and a torsion beam in the back. Some of this car's rivals do have independent suspension in the back if they come with all-wheel drive. And the 0 to 100 km/h sprint is done in 7.6 seconds, and the top speed is 200 km/h. Let's begin the interior run with the boot as usual, but first let's check out these quad exhaust pipes. Yeah, power! So this is electrically operated because we're talking about the GF version. The base model doesn't get electrically operated tailgate, and the boot, well, I saw the specs on the Geely's website and they said 330 liters, but I think that's an understatement. This feels bigger. I didn't measure it, but it seems a bit bigger than 330 liters. Even the dog is exhausted by the heat, right? Yeah. For example, the Duster is supposedly offering 456 liters of boot space, but I think this is bigger than the Duster just by looking at it, but I don't know, there may be some issues with my eyes. So this is the light you have inside the boot to see what you're reaching for, right? And we have a spare wheel under the floor here, and the rear bench is foldable in a 60/40 split. Let's hop inside. So what about the build quality? So we have a tougher plastic over here compared to the front door card, but it's not that bad, to be honest. It's better than in the Duster. Even though it is harder to the touch, it feels a lot nicer, right? So it doesn't scratch as much. This is a black piano finish trim, right? This will get scratchy over time, but something you don't really see in this segment is ambient lighting in the back. This car has it, but mind you, you don't get ambient light on the base version. So we have soft touch materials over here in synthetic leather. We have a really nice plastic over here and some extra storage space over there. Let's check out the interior. So this is the rear seats. They look pretty good. I like the contrast on this synthetic leather between the black and the red, right? The red and the black. And I like these holes over here. I think this looks pretty good and it actually feels good to the touch. And since we're talking about the GF version, we also have an armrest, which is missing on the base version. We also have two ISOFIX anchor points. They come as standard, as is this rear vent. We also have a USB charging port over here and two heated seats. These are optional I mean optional. They are not available on the base version. Some extra storage space and an almost flat floor. Let's check out the room. So I'm 6 feet tall. This is the driver's seat adjusted in my comfortable driving position, and I have plenty of room over here in the back. I like this storage space, which is really nicely done over here, and I like the fact that the rear of the front seats is wrapped in this synthetic leather as well. This actually feels pretty good. So let's talk about the headroom. If I lean forward, I do touch this area over here. But that's because this has the mechanism for the sunroof. Otherwise, if I sit back, I'm not touching the roof line, so that's pretty good. And I actually like this detail over here with this red stitching on the side of the center armrest over here. That's pretty nice. Let's hop inside. Let's hop in the front and check out what it has to offer. So, as I said, the front door card has a better material over here in the top side, right? It's softer to the touch, and we do have ambient lighting over here, the same glossy black trim and the same leather for the armrest. And this is a 1 liter bottle that fits rather nicely over here in the armrest. These are the front seats. Quite comfortable, done of the same materials. They actually feel really nice. Since we're talking about the GF version, we have a 6-way electrically adjustable seat, but on the base model you don't get electrically adjustable seats. The materials are quite nice, and I actually like this design a lot. So let's hop in the front. Right, this is the steering wheel. If you've ever driven a Volvo, you probably know how these buttons work, right? They work the same as they do in any Volvo. The stalks also remind me of Volvo models, and we have a 10-inch display behind the wheel, which is basically your instrument cluster, which is okay. You can change the information shown on the left, right, and the one on the right. Somehow, I don't really remember how. Right, we have a auto parking button over here, and the materials used on the dashboard are really nice too. This is some soft touch leather, right? I like the color palette with this red insert over here, gray, black. It actually works really well. And this is soft touch plastic. You only get hard plastic over here. This is the multimedia screen, which is 12 inches. And I have a couple of issues here. First of all, you don't get a navigation system on this car at all. But you can have Apple CarPlay, not Android Auto, unfortunately. For that, you have to install an app, and you have to use this cable. That's not exactly optimal, but if you're going to buy this car, you're probably going to buy yourself an iPhone as well. It's not that expensive. We do have physical buttons for the climate menu, and also on the wrong side of things, if you will. I don't like the fact that whenever I start the car, the radio doesn't automatically turn on. You have to go into the multimedia menu and start it manually. Also, the car has a lot of options you can choose from, right? You can optimize the display, for example, the brightness, the day and night mode. You can choose to have it in day mode, in night mode, whatever you want, right? You can choose the ambient lighting to dance to the music. If you want that to, you can choose from a number of options. Over here you can tune the sound, right? Equalizer, there we go, custom, so on and so forth. A number of things. My advice would be to keep this menu on, because whenever you're going to hop inside the car, you're going to have to turn off the roadside speed info and so on and so forth. And we do have this battle inscription over here. I don't know why, because we're not going to war, but I like the fact that we have a sort of handle over here wrapped in leather as well, so everything is leaning towards the driver. I don't like the glossy black over here, but we do have driving modes and these adjustable cup holders, right? You can probably tell you can adjust just how big they are by using these separators, right? And yeah, it's pretty good. We have a wireless charger over here, but that's not available on all models, just on the top spec ones, and a rather big armrest. So yeah, pretty good. So what is it like to drive this car around town? Well, the first thing you're going to notice is how the car behaves in adaptive mode, right? So as I said, it defaults to the adaptive driving mode, and it makes it quite eager to set off the line. So let's say I have grid lock in front. Let's say you just want to set off. I'm going to give it 50% power, right? In this case, of course it did. It didn't break traction, but most of the time the car actually breaks traction, and not only that, but it makes a tire squeal as if you're trying to do some burnouts with it, completely gratuitous. So I think the people from Geely wanted to set it up this way intentionally so that it feels a lot more dynamic and agile than it actually is. I think they should have fitted better quality tires on it in order for the car to be able to put that power down, because as I said, if you accelerate harder, the only thing you're gonna get is a lot of tire squeal and some torque steer. That's another thing I really didn't expect from this car. But overall, it's not a bad car to drive. It's very eager to get off the line, as I said, and it seems to be doing pretty well around town. I mean, the gearbox is not as jittery as you would expect from a dual clutch setup. But yes, I did notice that if you're standing still in heavy traffic and you're doing bumper to bumper traffic for longer periods of time, I did notice that the car does start to shake a little bit after a while, right? So the transmission basically feels as if it's slipping the clutch, but that's not exactly what's happening. But that's what you feel like. If you ever had a slipping clutch in your manual car, you probably know that feeling, right? So it handles the city driving quite well. The suspension is very refined. It's a bit on the stiffer side of things, and I think that was also done on purpose to give this car a sportier feeling, in tune with the exterior, which has that huge ridiculous wing at the back and the quad tailpipes, right, for a 1.5 liter. That's quite crazy. But I think that was done on purpose to make this car feel a bit better. I don't find it too disturbing. I mean, the suspension is absolutely okay in my book, even though it is on the stiffer side of things, but it's not like in an M3 or an M5, right? Well, actually the current M5 is more comfortable. It's not that stiff. It's just a bit on the stiffer side of things. It's a bit just, I'd say 5% stiffer than a Duster. If you've ever been in a Duster, this feels 5% stiffer, but overall the suspension, in the way it handles bumps and uneven surfaces and so on, it feels more refined than in a Duster, right? It sends less vibrations into the cabin, and it's quieter overall. And that's a big plus in my book, especially if you're gonna drive this car a lot around town, where you're gonna hit various potholes, you know, tram lines and all sorts of things. Outside the city limit, that won't be an issue, because you're not gonna feel the stiffness or the refinement of the suspension that much, but around town, it does help out quite a bit. I also like the fact that we do have auto hold. It's something that's missing from a number of its rivals, namely the ones from the Stellantis group. I don't know why Stellantis doesn't seem to be able to implement a auto hold system. But overall, yeah, it's quite easy to drive around town. You can also use ICC around town, you know, for the car to automatically adapt to the traffic situation, which is yet another plus. And of course, you're going to be interested in the fuel consumption. Well, turns out this car is quite thirsty, but I did see that coming. Now, most cars of this size with a petrol engine, without any sort of hybrid help, will probably be looking at a fuel consumption of at least 10 liters per 100 kilometers covered, but that will vary depending on the amount of power you have. So for example, the last Duster I drove, which was not a hybrid, with the 1.2 liter 130 horsepower engine, returned about 10 liters per 100 kilometers covered, and that's a mild hybrid setup. This car with 170 horsepower and no hybrid help returned an average of 11 liters, but at a bit of a higher speed compared to the Duster when I tested it. So with the Duster I had an average speed of about 18 kilometers an hour. With this one I had an average speed of 25. But I'm guessing if that average speed dropped to, let's say, 20 kilometers an hour or even under, I think that fuel consumption figure would have gone up to about 12 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is not bad. But it's still quite a lot for a number of people. It's in line with most of its rivals. So if you want better fuel consumption, you gotta pay more. So yeah, not a lot more to tell you about driving this car around town. Parking is very easy to do. The steering is very light. And the brake pedal is well configured, right? So you don't have any nasty, it's not too soft, not too sensitive, or not too unsensitive. I don't know. It's well weighted. The brake pedal is well weighted, right? Parking is easy because you have very good visibility all around, and you also have a 360-degree camera on this car because this is the top spec model line. On the base model, you only get a rear view camera and rear parking sensors. You don't get front parking sensors like you do on this car, right? So there are a couple of differences, and that's about it. So we're driving on the highway right now with the Geely Coolray. And I did notice a couple of very interesting things while driving on the highway with this car. First of all, it is quite noisy inside. So my decibel meter read an average of 80 decibels, which is pretty high. I didn't really expect that, but what I can tell you is that it doesn't feel that noisy inside. You know, some cars, even though the instruments show a higher level of noise, some cars feel a bit more refined. And if you just keep a constant speed of 120, 130 kilometers an hour, you barely hear the ICE, the engine under the hood. But I'm guessing you're going to be quite interested in how this car accelerates, right? So let's do an overtake. I'm going to slow down to 80 kilometers an hour to see how this car accelerates to 130. So let's go. I'm doing 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130 kilometers an hour. So it's not a rocket, but you won't be begging for performance either. And the engine is very eager to rev. It's making a lot of noise, but not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily translate into speed, especially at higher speeds like we're happening to do on the highway right now. What you will also notice is the fact that this is quite thirsty on the highway. So the average fuel consumption I saw was 8 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is not terrible, but not great either. A lot of its rivals in this segment are doing a bit better on the highway. So yeah, another thing I noticed is the ICC, which is Intelligent Cruise Control, their version of adaptive cruise control, but it's more than that. It doesn't just keep you in lane and away from the cars in front of you, but it also allows you to take your hands off the steering wheel for quite a long period of time, as you can tell. So I did take my hands off the steering wheel a while back, and the car is not saying anything so far. So that's pretty nice. But it just deactivated the cruise control system. So that's interesting. No warning whatsoever, it just turned it off. But overall it's doing a good job. What I did notice is the fact that this car is a bit forgetful. So every time you turn on the ICC, it will forget that you set it to the closest distance to the car in front, right? So it will, if you're starting it up, it will default to the longest distance from the car in front. And that's not the only area where it's forgetful. So whenever you start the car, it defaults to the adaptive driving mode, even though let's say you prefer comfort mode, you drove in comfort mode before you parked the car. When it starts back again, it starts in adaptive driving mode. It forgets to start the sound system whenever you set off, right? So it doesn't automatically turn on the radio or the Bluetooth music or anything like that when you set off. So it's quite forgetful, I would say. But it's not that bad to drive, I might add on, because it's actually quite fun to drive, even though it does have some lag in the throttle and the way it responds. So it took about a second to start accelerating from the moment I pressed on the gas pedal. It does have some lag, but once you get used to it, it's quite fun in the corners. And it does make the tires squeal a bit, which is quite interesting. Even in normal traffic, in adaptive mode, the car is very eager to set off. As for the noise inside, my decibel meter showed an average of 80 decibels at 130 kilometers an hour, which is on the higher side of the spectrum. Most cars are between 78 and 79. This one is a bit above. It doesn't really feel that noisy, as a matter of fact, inside. But, you know, the decibel meter said what it said, so I'm gonna run with that. But we're about to enter the city, and I'm gonna tell you a bit more about how this car drives when we get inside the city. But overall, on the highway, I think it will be pretty good for most people. It's not a bad car by any means, and it's also pretty cheap, so there isn't a lot you can ask from it. So what's the takeaway here, guys? Well, as you probably figured out from what I've been saying, this car has some pros and some cons working against it. There is no universal perfect car out there. It could be the perfect car for you, or it may not. But everyone needs to make their own choice. In my book, this car definitely has some things going for it. It has the interior, which is made rather nice. It has the driving dynamics. I actually enjoyed those. But on the other hand, it may have some downsides as well, such as the fuel consumption and maybe the jerkiness of the transmission in certain situations. But I am rather curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. Do you own one? Because it has been on the market for quite some time. Give me some feedback in the comments. Are you interested in buying one? Tell me why, so on and so forth. So let's meet in the comments, and until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.